Hey everybody, this is Kanan from the Movie Boys. I'm here to do another box office projection. Um, Felt like I talked a long time last time, so I'll try and be a little bit quicker this time. Try and go over basically just the gist of everything, and then if y'all ever want anything more in depth, I obviously can, but I'm trying not to be too boring about it. So first, I'll just go over how we did last week, which I think we got pretty lucky last week. I think part of it was the amount was so low that we could only be off by so much because we only had 60 million in the total box office. But if you go to the last video, we projected about 10 million for Send Help. We were off by about 9%, 9.5%, which is pretty solid. And Iron Lung, that was one of our bad ones. We projected 8.5 and it made about 6. So we were off by about close to 30%. So that's not a great projection for that one. Um, then we went to The Stranger Chapter 3. That was the worst of the week. That was a 42% drop from what we projected. It only made about 3.5 million, which I expected it to make a little bit more, but I mean, if you make two bad movies, you can expect the people to show up to the third bad movie. So, guess I probably should have taken that more into account. Lastly on here, we had Dracula. 4.4 million was the actual. 5 million total was our projection. So I think that one was pretty solid. It was a little above 10, which I prefer to keep it under 10 if I can. So I think we did pretty good on that one. As far as our good ones, I don't think I'll be able to do much better than this on any projection in the future, honestly. Solo Mio, people were projecting 5 million range. There were very few saying about 6, but I had it at 7. I overshot it a little bit, and I said if it does anything different, I expected it to be over, which it is a little bit over. And looking at that, I just don't think we can get any better than that. Moving on to the last thing we projected last week, which would be the domestic release. Just in total for the domestic box office was 60 million was a projection, 28% drop off, 20 and a half. That's what we projected, and what we ended up with was really, really dang close to what actually happened. So, 84 and a half is the grade. That's just a kind of cumulative grade based off of these differences. And I would be really surprised if we end up with a better grade than that. So we'll kind of see how it goes. For this coming week, I am kind of expecting, obviously, a bounce back. We're going to have a 130% jump, is what I'm expecting. Looking at last year, you can see this weekend was also a Valentine's weekend, but kind of started on Valentine's Day. So total, we had a 154, but we did have Captain America: Brave New World, which some people didn't like, some people thought was okay, but either way, it had an 88 million opening. So don't think we're gonna have any movies touching that. And then it didn't really have any big secondary releases like this week does, but we'll see what happens. I think it'll be a little bit of a drop from last year, but I still think it'll be a good weekend overall. And just as a note, I'm not taking into account the President's Day. Some people are doing 4-day projections. I'm just doing the 3 days, just to keep it all the same, simple, straightforward. But to start with, we can start, I guess, with the bottom up. So good luck, have fun, don't die. And cold storage, I have really similar. So looking at it, the projected theater count for Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die is about 1,600. So looking at that and looking at cold storage, I think cold storage will be about the same. The only thing that kind of gives me pause for giving Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die a more optimistic box office opening is the fact that the theaters around me, at least, which obviously don't mean everything, but they're both showing cold storage, but only one is showing Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die. And I don't know if that's for licensing rights or what's going on with that, but cold storage is also being shown at our drive-in theater. which is a little odd. So I think maybe cold storage will end up in maybe closer to 2,000 theaters. So the average per theater might actually go down um, for cold storage, but the total will probably be a little bit higher, is what I'm thinking. So going into that, I do have some comps that I'll get to in just a second. Those are going to be right here. Going over to our last comp. So these are not perfect. These are just kind of ones that I felt had a similar vibe, similar kind of deal that we might be able to think of. So each of them, some of them were bigger releases, closer to 3,000 theaters, maybe 2,500 theaters, whatever the case. So I didn't break it down into the theater counts, but I did break it down to the average. So if we take that average of 3,200 and we take it to the 1,600 theaters that it's projected, um, you get about 5 million. So that's probably around what we might be looking at. As far as cold storage, like I said, I think it'll be in a couple more theaters, a couple hundred more. And I might be wrong about that. We'll see whenever it comes out. This projection doesn't have cold storage on there. And then this one just has the top three. So we're going to have to see. What I think cold storage has going for it for a little bit, number one, is the fact that I think it will end up making a little bit more just because it'll be in more theaters. But I do think it has a little bit of a bump because honestly, it has Steve from Stranger Things, and people recognize Liam Neeson. So it has a little bit of that. Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die has Sam Rockwell, but he's not exactly recognizable in it. So I think people will go see both. I hope they do. Both are apparently pretty fun, pretty good, but going back into our projection, that's kind of what I'm thinking as far as those two go. Hopefully, they'll both be even more than that. Obviously, we always want it to be undershot rather than overshot because that means it's performing better than expected. So that's always a good thing. So jumping up to Crime 101, which this is one that people are really, I feel, underestimating. So going into the box office projection, the 3 day forecast on here is going to be 12.5 million, 4 day 14 and a half. So they're projecting about 4 million, a little over 4 million a day for the 3 million, or for the 3 day weekend. Sorry. As for this one, they're expecting it's kind of similar, 8 to 13. If anything, that's honestly lower because you're looking at 10 and a half. So jumping back into it, why do I have it at 17? So firstly, I'll look at the comps. The comps are, like I said, again, not perfect, but I do think they'll have somewhat of a play on how it'll look. Crime 101 is probably going to be in around 3,000 theaters. I don't, I mean, that's what this has projected. So it averaging 3,000, I don't think is really going to be that hard. I think it'll be tougher for it not to, honestly, at that point. So I guess we'll just have to see. I could be really wrong about it. That's kind of my, I guess, bolder prediction for this weekend is that's gonna outperform these projections by almost, I mean, not double, but by over 50% is what I have it at. And obviously these are not perfect, but the movie wants to be heat, movie wants to be hell or high water. It doesn't really seem like it wants to be drive. Seems like it wants to be kind of that stylized crime action thriller kind of thing. So, and those generally do pretty well, at least as far as the averages go. Like I said, these aren't perfect. These were not all in a ton of theaters. So, with it being in 3,000 theaters, we'll see how it does. But I'm looking at that and also looking at the fact that it doesn't really have any competition as far as the type of movie it is. So looking at Cold Storage, Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, those are going to be kind of more fun, quirky, horror, sci-fi, comedy type of deals. Goat is an animated movie that the families will be going to. And obviously, if you're a fan of Steph Curry, you'll probably go to it. He's producing it. And looking at the other releases that'll be out there, I mean, you have You still have Iron Lung, you still have Send Help, you still have all those kinds of solo mio, but none of those are really touching the same type of genre as Crime 101. So we'll see how it goes. I think it's going to do better than people expect. I really hope it does. It has some pretty solid reviews. And then just to show you, I'll give y'all an idea of how the reviews are looking. Good Luck, Have Fun, Don't Die, really strong. Crime 101 strong so far. Cold Storage is doing okay. Goat is doing really, really solid. And Wuthering Heights, it was always going to be kind of divisive. So we'll see how it ends up. Apparently, it's not really close to the book. And I don't know. We'll see how it ends up. But looking at that, moving on to Goat, we have that at 20 and a half. So that's also a little above what people have projected. This guy has it projected 20.3, and that's for the 4-day weekend. For his 3-day weekend, he only has it at 16. I think this movie's pretty easily gonna crack 6 to 7 million a day. So I don't think that's really out of the realm of possibility at all. I think we haven't had a good animated movie in a while, especially something original. You had David, which did pretty well. You had SpongeBob, which did okay as far as I know. But Zootopia is the one that's still actually making money. So people are wanting to go see an animated movie, and they haven't really been given a new good one to fall back on. So I do think this one actually has a really close to what I'm looking at. They have it a bit more, about 21, so 21 and a half. So we'll see what it ends up being, but I have it at 20.5 for this weekend. Just to give y'all an idea of the comps I used for it. Kind of original IP, but not um, super well known or anything like that. We had The Bad Guys, Migration, which Migration didn't have a great opening, but if you look at its box office numbers, had an insane amount of legs, just kept going, kept going, kept going. Ended up making a couple hundred million. So, looking at Paw Patrol, the Emoji Movie is the same studio, and the Nut Job. So, all of that being said, you're looking at 5,000 average per theater, and if we get 5,000 average for 3,500, um, I mean that's pretty easily going to crack. I believe actually that ends up being exactly what I projected, which was not intentional. I'll go ahead and check that real quick just to see if I'm off base on that. Nope, just did bad math. Either way, I think it'll be do pretty well. I have it at, like I said, 20.5. So we're gonna see how it goes. Hopefully it'll do well. Obviously, love to see original movies doing pretty well. So I think it has enough of a push that it's gonna make a pretty good amount of money. I think people will want to go see that. But like I said, could be wrong. Who knows? Lastly, we have our big release going into IMAX. That's Wuthering Heights. This one's a little bit more controversial, and I think that will actually kind of drive the numbers up. It might drive the ratings down a little bit. I think some people are upset um, for the race of Jacob Elordi's character. They're also upset that it's not really like the book at all. It really appears to basically just be some sort of hybrid of 50 Shades of Grey and Pride and Prejudice. I don't know if I'm off base saying that. Somebody can say in the comments if I'm way off. We'll see. But either way, I'll jump into why I have it at that. So right here we have our comps. Obviously, it's a period piece, so it's not going to be like um, 50 Shades of Grey and Gone Girl, Magic Mike. These are just kind of movies I felt might share some similar vibes. Looking at 50 Shades, it did come out Valentine's weekend. I don't know, 10 years ago, whenever it came out, and it made 85 million the opening weekend, which was kind of insane. I don't think this is going to be like that. I think that's probably the reason people have it making so much money. Um, which this one's a little bit more reasonable. I'm actually, if anything, on the high end for this one. So we'll see how this one shakes out. But these are going to be my comps for what we're using. If it were 12,000 per theater at 3,500 theaters, we can kind of give you an idea of what that would look like. So there you go. 42 million. That's really close to what I had projected. Again, I didn't do those calculations beforehand, so honestly, kind of crazy it ended up that way, but I guess that's just where my brain went. Either way, looking at these are going to be my projections for the weekend. I'm really hoping that if anything, these are all going to be too low. I've sent help about 4 million, so we'll see if that cracks back into the top five. Because it was still, I mean, it was still number one last week. Um, but I do have it dropping out of that top five, so we'll see what happens. But this is my projection for the weekend as a whole. And those were kind of the comps I used, the reasons I used each of them. If you have any interest or recommendations on how I could maybe hone in some of the tools I'm using or some of the ideas I'm using to come up with these numbers, I'd love to hear some ideas on how I could potentially make it better. I'm definitely not um, claiming to be any sort of expert. I'm just now really starting this, so I don't really know what I'm doing, and I'd love some recommendations on how I can get better and better, and hopefully in a short amount of time we can get to where we're actually projecting good numbers and get an idea of where we might be going. So with all that, I think that'll be everything. So yeah, have a good day.